Yo, good morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever time you are tuning in to this broadcast. This is Ishues, Coach Ish. Let's talk some boxing. A lot of people have been hitting me up about Shakur Stevenson retiring from boxing. Is Shakur Stevenson retiring from boxing? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. I don't think his retirement is permanent. I could be wrong. But he's young. He still got the itch. As a boxer, it's hard to let that itch go. It's very hard to let that itch go as a fighter. He's still young. He's still healthy. He don't really have no compelling reasons to hang up the gloves completely, especially since, he just had a baby and there's still money out there for him to be made. There's money out there for him. However, I do understand his frustration with the business. Now, many people can point to certain things such as him turning down the Devin Haney fight, which that's his prerogative, you know what I mean? The reason why I make these videos and the reason why I'm going to continue to make these videos, doesn't matter how many people view these videos, is because I be watching other boxing channels and the perspective that a lot of them come from are solely from the perspective of a fan, of a casual boxing fan, or just a boxing fan. And you have to have more of an understanding than just from the standpoint of a boxing fan. I say that to say this. I've seen numerous people covering this, right? One of them in particular that kind of bothered me. Once I got to that point in the video, I had to turn it off. It was my man CJ Goodfella, who, I rock with some of the things he say. I don't rock with some of the other things he say. I agree sometimes, I disagree sometimes. But the one thing that he was saying about Shakur Stevenson that kind of got under my skin was he kept saying that, him getting frustrated and quitting is a female trait. And, and I heard, other people, kind of coming after Shakur Stevenson and saying, no, you shouldn't quit or you shouldn't retire, you still got more. Listen. If that man wants to retire, let him. He can retire. See, people who say those things don't really understand boxing. They've never participated in the sport. They probably never even sparred. Because if first of all, the business in boxing is corrupt. We all know this. We all know it. Now, as a fighter, you go into the business of boxing understanding it, but having confidence with enough in your team that you could kind of maneuver around it. But when you see the bullshit that goes on in boxing these days, it's frustrating. You know what I'm saying? It's frustrating, especially for those who really take the time to be really good, like a Shakur Stevenson, like a Terrence Crawford, who went through what he went through before he had an opportunity to fight Errol Spence, and the tides changed for him. But, Shakur Stevenson turned down the Devin Haney fight, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you signed to Bob Arum. Lomachenko signed to Bob Arum, Emmanuel Navarrete, all these dudes. And the fact that Shakur Stevenson keep getting passed over for all of these fights is kind of crazy to me. You know what I'm saying? Instead of Navarrete fighting Shakur Stevenson, he's fighting, I don't even know the bull's name. I don't want to try to say it and butcher it. I really don't know him. Everybody that I've seen, they have to read it. So I ain't even going to front like I know him, like I'm that knowledgeable that I know who the dude is, because nobody seems to know him. Everybody, when they say his name, they either butcher it or they have to read it. So they covering up the fact that they really don't know who he is, but they try to come off like they so knowledgeable about the sport that they know who this unknown dude is. We don't know this dude. We don't know this dude. And most people know that Shakur Stevenson would beat Navarrete. I think so. I think Navarrete makes a lot of mistakes. And I think Navarrete makes way more mistakes than Shakur Stevenson. And that's ultimately in boxing, that's what it comes down to. In boxing, two sports where that comes down to more than anything. Boxing and NASCAR. The driver in NASCAR makes the least amount of mistakes on that long track around all them laps. Is usually the winner. Same thing with boxing. That long 12 rounds, 10 rounds, whatever it is, the person who makes the least amount of mistakes is the one who usually wins. So Shakur Stevenson has been vocal about wanting to fight Lomachenko, yet Lomachenko is fighting Kambosos. Now, I think there's other places where Shakur Stevenson can go. I don't necessarily think it's necessary for him to retire. You know what I'm saying? I think he could pursue a fight with Frank Martin. I think he could pursue, even though Frank Martin backed out of the last fight that they had scheduled, I think he could. De Los Santos, you should probably rematch him, even though I think he'll beat him. I don't, people giving Shakur Stevenson a hard time about that performance against De Los Santos. I mean, it was a bad night. It was an off night. At the end of the day, he walked out of it victorious and unharmed. That's actually the point. You know what I mean? From a fan's perspective, we want them to go in there and spill blood and all this other stuff, and you know what I mean, for our entertainment. But if you can go in there and win a fight and don't get touched and come out safe, that's the point. I actually argued with my brother over this. He was, oh, Shakur Stevenson, oh, you trash. Did he win? Yes. Did he get hurt? No. That's the point. Ultimately, that's the point. The fans' enjoyment, that's secondary, really. Primary is what the ref tell you. Protect yourself at all times. Primary is to go in there, get the win, make your money, and go home and be safe. Go back to your family with all your faculties. That's the primary responsibility of a fighter, not to please the crowd. You should want to please the crowd, because ultimately that's going to determine the money you make. And maybe part of the reason why he's getting passed over, whatever, that performance and other performances where he looked lackluster may have something to do with it. Yeah, but at the same time, that's the nature of the type of fighter he is. There's been plenty of fighters throughout the history of the sport. Pernell Whitaker is famous for saying, when I listen to the crowd and they start booing, I know I'm winning. Because he's primarily a defensive fighter. So if I'm making him miss and I'm turning this into a boxing match and it's not a bloodbath, I'm winning. So whenever I hear the crowd start booing, I know I'm winning. So Shakur Stevenson is a slick fighter, a defensive fighter. He throws combinations, but he doesn't have a high output because he's a very cautious fighter. And sometimes that don't go over well with the fans. But what the fans don't understand is what it feels like to get hit in the head and hit in the body repeatedly. They don't understand what that feels like. They don't understand what it feels like to put yourself through a training camp. And a lot of these YouTubers don't understand it either. That's why I'm speaking on it. You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm speaking on it. Because I understand to a limited capacity. I never went pro, but I competed in the sport. I sparred at many gyms. I still spar to this day. And I train amateur and pro fighters. So I understand it from a coach standpoint, and I also understand it from a fighter standpoint. Only thing that I don't understand, probably as far as real world experience, is getting in the ring and fighting a 12-round professional fight or fighting a professional fight. But I understand it as a coach, though. You know what I'm saying? And the things that these fighters go through, unless you've gone through it, you don't understand. You know what I'm saying? Most of them probably don't even understand how it feels to go home after a 4 or 5 round sparring session and have to take Tylenol and aspirin and lay down because your head is ringing, or having trouble driving home because you got hit in the head too many times in sparring, and now your vision is kind of blurry a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Or your ribs is hurting. You know what I mean? Or you got hit with a liver shot and you got dropped, or you got a bloody nose, or, you know what I'm saying? You hurt. And that's just sparring. So a lot of these dudes don't even understand what that's like, let alone doing all of that to prepare for an actual pro fight where both are trying to literally hurt the other. So when people say things like, oh, you that's a female tendency, what? No, that's his prerogative. I may not agree. You may not agree. But as a fight, you're not in there taking those punches. You're not going through training camp. You're not sacrificing. The life of a boxer is a life of sacrifice. Especially to be at the highest level in boxing is a life of sacrifice. Any pro athlete, really. But boxing, you got to sacrifice a lot. Your health is one of them. And potentially your scruples is another. So if he's saying, because of the bullshit, I'm tired of the bullshit in boxing. I'm tired of the bullshit in boxing. I'm done with it. Who are we to question his mental state? Who are we to question that decision as fans? Who are we? So, you know, I was going to go into more detail about this, but it was like after I got up, I was like, all right, I'm gonna make a video about it. And while I was eating my breakfast, I started just looking at things other people were saying, and it became more about defending Shakur Stevenson and his decision. Even though I don't think the decision is permanent, I think he's gonna come back. But if he doesn't, oh well. Andre Ward went through the same thing when he quit. People thought he quit too early, he still got some more to go, and people was da-da-da-da-da. They didn't understand the injuries he had. So, you know, it wasn't until later on that he came out and started talking about the injuries he had and kind of forced him to quit. But he was still young and still pretty much had a lot in the tank as far as we were concerned. So Andre Ward was another one. We thought he was going to come back, and he never came back. So, yeah, it's unprecedented. You know what I'm saying? Basically, you know, without going to preaching, Shakur Stevenson is kind of pulling a Mace. And when Mace quit rapping at 19, being on top, he was on top of the world, signed with Puff. Quit rapping at 19, to be a pastor, nobody understood it until later on. When he started talking about it and all the stuff that's coming out about Puff. But we don't know the intricacies of what Shakur Stevenson is going through. And I think, you know, him not fighting Lomachenko is bullshit. I kind of lost a lot of respect for Lomachenko. Lomachenko used to be one of my favorite fighters until he turned down Shakur Stevenson. And since then have been kind of making it a point to avoid fighting Shakur Stevenson. Which I get it, I understand, but I can't rock with that. Navarrete, I'm listening to his interviews. He's saying the right things. I don't think he wants to fight Shakur Stevenson. You know what I'm saying? Am I interested in seeing Lomachenko versus Kambosos? Hell no. For what? For what? What does that fight actually mean? You know what I'm saying? That Lomachenko can beat Kambosos, who beat Lopez. That's pretty much all as fans we're going to get out of it. I think he's fighting for a vacant belt, which honestly Shakur Stevenson should be fighting for that vacant belt. So you fighting for a vacant belt, but for what? Let's say Lomachenko wins and get the vacant belt. You're not going to unify, and you're not going to move up. You're not going to unify. You're not going to move up. Your dream is dead. Your dream of being the unified, undisputed champion at 35 is dead. Your chance was against Devin Haney, and you came up short. So yeah, you could collect a belt here and there and this and that, whatever, but you're not going to unify. You know what I'm saying? You might have a chance after, but can you beat everybody at 135? No, it's already been proven. Came up short against Lopez. Came up short against Devin Haney. And if you fight Tank, probably will come up short against Tank as well. So Kambosos is actually a good fight for Lomachenko because Kambosos is kind of tailor-made for Lomachenko. I don't see Kambosos. I didn't even make a video about that fight because, I mean, I probably am, but, for what? To see one of them get some sort of belt? Belts don't even have the significance that they used to have. Not like he gets a belt, he becomes the champion. He's a champion. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I don't really see any significance of Lomachenko fighting Kambosos. You know what I'm saying? I don't see any significance. Both of these dudes are dudes who lost to Devin Haney. So what are we fighting for? To see who's the better of the losers to Devin Haney? For what? What's more significant? Kambosos versus Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson's first test at 135 against someone who's proven at 135. That's significant. Shakur Stevenson versus Lomachenko. That's significant. Because Shakur Stevenson has been wanting that fight since he was at 130. He's been chasing Lomachenko since he was at 130. So that's significant. You know what I'm saying? Shakur Stevenson versus Navarrete, that's significant. Navarrete versus this dude for a vacant belt, it's corny. At Navarrete's point in his career, he's got what, 30-some fights? At this point in his career, he shouldn't be fighting nobody but names. Because most of his 30-some fights or whatever, we don't know most of them. You know what I'm saying? So, I understand where Shakur Stevenson is coming from. And I just want to be, first of all, it seems like everybody's piling on top of him, even the ones that kind of seem like they keep saying, yeah, I rock with Shakur Stevenson, but I don't like this, I don't like that. You shouldn't quit. You shouldn't da-da-da-da-da. Look, if you want to quit, let him quit. If you want to retire, let him retire. You know what I'm saying? We didn't watch him go through 3 weight classes, dominate 3 weight classes, and due to his frustration, which everybody's frustration is different, everybody's level of frustration is different, what they willing to put up is different, and we shouldn't expect him to put up with something that he feels is unjust. You know what I'm saying? So if that's the route he wants to go, I support it. Even though I don't think he's gonna retire for good. I think he's gonna come back. Give him the right offer, he'll come back. You know what I'm saying? But I just wanna comment on, everybody piling on top of Shakur Stevenson and calling him, a female, and these are female tendencies and all this other. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Have you ever boxed? Have you ever actually fought? Have you ever competed? How much time do you spend in the gym? How many sparring rounds do you go through? You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people don't have those experiences, yet they want to be criticizing these young fighters or these fighters who is in one of the most dangerous sports in the history of man. It's a dangerous sport. Even if you have a good career and you don't, you emerge victorious most of the time, man, you can lose your faculties and your brain cells. You can lose your life, your quality of life. All it takes is one shot. All it takes is one fight to totally change everything. It's a dangerous sport. And for whatever reason, whatever the reason is, if a fighter decides, I've had enough, then we as fans should respect that. Regardless of how we feel, what we may think because we are not in there in training camp with them. We are not in the gym. We don't do none of the work for them. And unless you've either trained as a fighter or trained fighters, you don't really understand what it takes to go through that. So that's all I got on it. Like, comment, subscribe, share, put it, comment on it, and let's talk about it. I'll respond to comments. So let's get into it. But that's my feeling on it, and that's all I got. Peace and love.